Welcome to the Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Haunted Houses. Hold on a sec. I heard a noise behind that door.
Where'd my voiceover guy go? Welcome everybody to the Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by GLK&H Attorneys at Law. Need a do-over? We won't let your mistakes get in the way of the ending you want. Don't get angry, get a lawyer from GLK&H. Do you actually know what that is?
No, but it's so great. What is that?
Oh, I won't spoil that one.
Okay, good.
Lest I be judged. Welcome everybody to the Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we're filmmakers from all sides of the camera, from behind, camera operating, producing, DP, directing, writing, as well as in front as actors and stuntmen. We are the one thing we are definitely not qualified to do. Though we got friends in that trade, and it's always fun. Our buddy Aaron's been doing a lot of stunt work. It looks like he's on the set of Halo, working on the new season of Halo, I saw him holding one of those massive swords, which is really cool. But that's crazy because he's filming in, I want to say Bulgaria. I already forgot where it is. Oh, Hungary. Maybe like near Budapest or something. But and it's just amazing where you got to go sometimes to film something, because to me, the thing that I've realized from the, early on as a filmmaker is location is everything. Finding the right location is just foundational to having a good shoot. The better your location, the less work you have to do to make it look right for your project. And so I spend, tons of time whenever I'm working on a new project to find the right place to shoot it. Like before you left Austin, I ran around, the inner 2 to 3 hours around Austin circumference, just looking for the right location to shoot, this little 60-second product video because I needed to feel adventurous, and we're out in the wilderness, and you just can't say, oh, there's trees in a bush, like good enough, right? It needs to feel like somewhere that you would go for an adventure, just short of, Mission Impossible, right? You want it to feel like immediately at a glance, you understand your location and why you're there. And so finding the right place is always just really, really important. And to me, the single most important part of pre-production, finding, as important as finding the right cast and getting the right script, it's finding the right location, and will just save you just a pound of cure through that ounce of prevention, which is kind of where we're at with, our film, the feature we've been working on for the past year and a half. It's just hard finding the right location. I thought I originally had the right location before I started writing the script, and I just kind of bumbled it. I didn't realize exactly what I was dealing with. And so I wrote certain elements into the script that I just can't, quite figure out. And so we've kind of opened up the search, and I met with my producer on Wednesday, and we went through a bunch of stuff, questions he had about the script, how we're going to shoot X, Y, and Z. And the heart of it, though, is just finding the right house, because it's the story is a Gothic horror, and Gothic horrors, the house, the location is critical. It's a character in the film, and in that genre. And so I told him, I was like, look, whenever I originally started, I thought the budget we had was going to be enough because of, the connections that we had and everything that we could accomplish on that set was just there. And we could spend the tiny budget that we have in all these other places in order to make it come alive, because it's set in the early 80s. And a period piece is never easy, but if you pick the right period and the right location, it becomes a lot easier. But if you don't have the right location, suddenly that tiny, budget needs to be $1 million budget, and it just suddenly balloons trying to get everything right, because it's costume, wardrobe, props, the right hair and makeup, set deck is just massively expensive and important in selling a period piece. And so it's easy to spend your money there if you don't have to spend it on a location. But if you do, then suddenly you're out of budget, like immediately. And so I told him, I was like, look, man, here's where we're at. I want you to take an honest look at the budget and what we're really looking at. And if you don't think we can do it, we have a certain quality level we both want to hit. And if you don't think we can do it, then that's fine. You're gonna have to tell me, and we'll pivot. Like, I'm okay. I have other story ideas, maybe not as sellable as that idea, but certainly ones that we can accomplish and just get on the map, which is really the goal, right? With this first one is let's just get on the board. Right now, we're not players on the board at all. Let's just get on the board. And then, we have this script in our back pocket that suddenly it's like, hey, we made X, this film for X dollars. We have another script, bigger, more interesting, more sellable. Give us $1 million, we'll go make this thing, and we'll do it incredibly well. And now that's kind of where we're at. The location being just this crux of a thing, man. What's your experience been? What's your feeling on getting the right locations? I know it's different for you because you and your work, you're handed a location and it's like, hey, make it look good. What's your take on that?
I mean, I'm right on par with you that location is everything. And, I don't make, the stuff that I make isn't the same, like you said, of what you make. You make more creative stuff. I have done several commercials, and in which case, basically whatever I have to turn it into what I need, right? And so, and it's really hard. Like, it's not, you have to change your angles that you shoot at. You have to change the lenses that you use, like, okay, well, we can't see this over here. So we have to shoot pretty tight on something.
Bring out the 200 millimeter lens.
Exactly. But he's 7 feet away. Yeah. I want to see the boogers in his nose. So we have to make concessions with stuff. And a lot of it is also set design, helping us to fix that scenario. So I have one person that I use a lot, or that I have used a lot. Her name's Caroline, and she is an incredible set designer. And she knows she knows how to make the set for the edit, right? So she sources things that we need to be on camera. And then she'll also do things like, okay, well, where's the frame going to be? All right, well, this, we need to put something up that makes this darker over here or something. And she will paint the frame for however we can best, tackle what we need. Right. And sometimes she can't do it all, sometimes she can't, it is what it is. And she's like, oh, but she's so positive, and she comes with ideas, and she says, okay, you want to do that? Well, here's some options. And she'll like give me options, which is great. They're never options that are perfect, but they're options that it's just a choice. It's like, okay, well, I could do this or I could do that. Well, which is the least worst? That's my world. What's the least worst? But sometimes we've been able to source locations and like go to locations and stuff, and it is so much better to have it built in. It just is more real. It's more authentic. The acting is more authentic, like, because they're in the space, they're in the area. They're not having to, you have Avengers stuff where they're acting in front of a blue screen, and that's difficult. But these are top level actors that are like really good at pretending that they're in outer space. You know what I mean? Yeah. For the level of actors that we're used to working with, it's much harder to pull that out of them, right? I totally agree. The location is everything, especially with this project that you're working on. It is literally the script. It is everything for you. So I'm glad that you're holding fast to that. And if that means making a pivot, somewhere else, then that's what you do. But I totally subscribe to just get on the board, and so that it's not a goose egg. You've got something to bounce off of to keep you moving forward to the next thing, and then keep you moving forward to the next thing. So So that conversation, you said you told me beforehand it was pretty long conversation. What else did you guys discuss?
I mean, we were there for a good, I don't know, at least 4 hours, 5 hours. We started at, he's in town, running a place, and we were right across from a bar. So we started catching up. Basically, we haven't been face to face in, 6 months or so. And so we, just catching up on stuff we're working on, other projects that we have in the works. And then it was like, hey, let's grab a beer and some lunch and we'll finish up the actual production conversation. And yeah, we just sat and he had a ton of questions just about props and, things that he needs. He was asking about some of the truck sequences. We shoot a handful of scenes in a truck with 3 people, right? 2 adults, 2 adult men, and a little girl. And he's like, how are you envisioning this? And I'm like, look, I'm pretty open. Here's some of the stuff I'm seeing. It doesn't have to be this way. And he's like, okay, I think we'll need a flatbed in order to shoot this. And I was like, okay, I think that's great. Certain things aren't going to work because there's a night scene. I really want to see headlights, flashing across them. And so that's going to dictate X, Y, and Z. And so he just had a lot of these little technical questions, very little story related. Because it's my habit, I got into story related stuff at, certain points. I was like, yeah, there's things I'm still debating. There's some flashback sequences that I'm like, I'm on the fence. Like I might cut these entirely, but I don't want to. I think it fleshes out this character so much, and it's really maybe not necessarily mission critical, but it really, really helps the story. But I was like, at the same time, there's just certain elements of this backstory that I'm worried about because it takes me into certain aspects of religion that I'm trying to avoid. And so it was just an interesting, like, sounding board kind of moment. He was like, well, yeah, here's what I think, don't be afraid to go against or, lean into the things you're afraid of. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that's fair. Cause part of it is just my history. Go listen to our episode on Sunset Limited to hear more of my background on with religion. But there's only so much headspace I want to stay in with religion. And so even though some of the stories I want to tell overlap and borrow, from my past, I have a certain line that I try not to cross into. And so it's more of me stuff than it is story stuff. But yeah, it was really helpful, I think, for him. And just for also me getting a sense of where he's at in his process. Because right now it's mostly in his hands as we're scouting, and we've been working with the Texas Film Commission. They've been amazing. It's effectively a free resource, and they do a great job of just saying, hey, what are you looking for? Here's all the people we work with. Here's like 10 locations in the circumference that you're looking for. And here's a bunch of pictures. Here's contact information with the owners. Like, they do an incredible job of being just a resource for, anyone from Linkletter to me. Right?
Wow, that's awesome.
It's pretty cool. But even with that, we still have a tiny budget. And so some of these locations, you're like, there's no point in even talking to these people. They clearly are going to be charging, $10 grand a day. And we'll be out of budget in less than a week. So it was useful. Having someone that sits down and goes through line by line to try to break out everything that your film is going to need. That's a line producer. That's someone who is skilled at looking at a single sentence and breaking it down and saying, okay, this is a scene in a bedroom, right? What all are we going to need for the bedroom? Because it takes place in this character's house. What kind of character is this? Is this a poor character or a rich character? 2 wildly different sets. And, what kind of books do they have? Do they have books? And they have to think about all these things that they could hand to your prop master and your set designer in order for them to start building on top of. But before they can do that, they have to guess, how much is that going to cost? And that's what your line producer is there to do, is to give you a really good idea of not just what you'll need from a practical, like what's in the scene, but the kinds of people that it will take to accomplish that in the first place. And so, if you're doing an Egyptian film, then suddenly, with horses, then you're thinking about, okay, well, we're doing this scene on horseback. So you need X amount of horses, and you need a horse wrangler or whatever they're called. And then you'll need stuntmen, right, to help you on those horses. And it just suddenly starts ballooning very quickly. And a line producer is really skilled at being able to do that. And so for me, that's been Ricky. And he went line by line through my script, every single line saying, we're going to need this, this, and this. And the things that he wasn't sure about, he was asking about. He's like, how married to this are you? How important is this? And like, we have trucks. He's like, you wrote in the script X, like a 59 Chevy. Is it important that it is a 59 Chevy? Because he takes everything written on the page as a very serious affair. It's not just Wes is just writing stuff to write it. It's Wes wrote 59 Chevy for a reason. Maybe I should ask him. And my reason was important story-wise, but doesn't need to be a 59 Chevy. It could be, a 55, whatever. The important part for me was communicating. This was an older truck, maybe a hand-me-down, because my backstory for this character was he was given this truck as, part of his family inheritance. And that's where that comes from. But practically speaking, from a producer's point of view, it doesn't matter. I just need an old truck, right? That's era appropriate. This character would have an older truck. This character would have a newer truck. So it takes place in 83. This character should have something between 79 and 82. This character should have something between 1950 and 1965, right? And so it's just giving him the parameters to work within that's important. And I just really have a lot of respect for people who do that, because they are thinking in 3D chess. And it's really cool to see in action.
That's awesome. That sounds like a great meeting.
Yeah. Very productive.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Great.
But only one beer, so I don't know how good of a meeting you can call that.
One beer, 5 hours? Jeez. You guys are
lightweights.
Killing me. Yeah. Amazing. All right. Well, what's the next step? So you're still location. Still,
yeah, he did a good job from there. He was like, okay, we're not getting much better from the TFC. And so he said, let's see if I can just go through Airbnbs and have some conversations. So he sent me a bunch of Airbnbs, one of which I was like, this actually, works fairly well. We'll need to scout it. But that's a weird conversation, because it goes from, hey, we want to rent, for a weekend on the farm, to, hey, we might want to rent this for 2 weeks, but before we do that, can we come poke around? And it's interesting, because I scouted around in a lot of these locations that are used to dealing with film productions. And you get a range of people, some people who are still new and are excited by it. It's like, hey, I'd love it, to help in any way I can. This seems like fun. We're bored out here and we just are happy to be here. And then I ran into one person that had done like 50 of them. And it went from, I was supposed to go look inside the house, and I suddenly arrived and they're like, yeah, I don't know if I want people inside. I'm like, why am I here? I just drove an hour and a half to come see you.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And suddenly, and so that's, kind of frustrating, but you also try to understand their point of view of, they've done this 1,000 times and they've had 1,000 crews run rampant through their house, and doesn't matter how, careful you try to be, stuff just happens, right? You might scuff the wall, and she had just repainted all the walls and had been, redecorating everything, and just, very wary of having people in. And I was like, don't worry, we're a very, very small budget. There won't be that many people. But she wasn't really present. She was just not fully paying attention to what I was saying. And so it's interesting running into those kinds of people. But ultimately, very nice person, still very adamant about helping out if we can, or if she can. And so I've never yet run into someone who was just, oh, I'm never going to deal with this person, right? Everyone is really cool. I think everyone in the film industry largely is, just interesting, fascinating people. That's always been the interesting part for me. And now this will be my last comment and we can move on, I guess. But if you've been on some of these nicer budget film sets, it's filled with dynamic, interesting personalities. And everyone there is there because they love film. They love the art. And it's funny to be talking to a teamster or, someone, a grip, right, who is just chiseled out of muscle, and they talk and dress like, they're fresh off the farm. And yet they're going to sit there and bend your ear about, Kurosawa. Like they'll start talking at a very high level about the art of film. And it's just really cool to be around those kinds of people that are completely unpretentious and yet, very sophisticated in their work. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you've been on more high budget stuff than I have, like film wise, especially. But I have done some high budget commercials and like been flown around for them. And it's like, I totally agree. I feel like the lower budget stuff, you have a lot of pompous people sometimes, so that like, they don't like actors because they think actors are just like divas.
Narcissistic divas, yeah.
Right, yeah, which they're not wrong.
Not wrong.
Sometimes, but are necessary. Let me be clear.
Yeah.
Or they're bitter because they've been doing the same thing for the same projects over and over for years. But then you have these higher budget stuff where you have you've got a line director or a line producer, and then you've got just one guy to run each light, and then you've got another guy who is standing behind the guy who's standing behind the camera, and then you've got a DP, and you've got an AD, and you've got one person for every single decision that needs to be made, and there's hundreds of them, right? But all of those people know that all of those other people are necessary for all of those other things. So they all respect and never overstep onto those people's position. And I think at first when I heard about, like, oh, if someone asks a grip to go get a stinger, then nobody else goes to get that stinger. That grip is the only one to go get that stinger. Like if I'm standing next to the stinger and I'm an actor, I do not touch that. That is not my job. And it's the opposite of corporate.
Yeah.
In corporate, it's like, oh, I'm looking for ways to help somebody out. I'm looking for ways to make things go faster, whatever. It is the opposite of that. It is if I grab that, then I am diminishing that person's role, because that person has a specific role, right? Is there for a specific reason. And if I overstep my bounds and what I'm supposed to do, then I'm diminishing his role. I'm invading into his space, and it is a sacred thing.
I mean, even more than that, honestly, it's about union regulations about what you can and cannot do on set.
Well, that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
That too. But because of that, everybody knows that everybody else is necessary. And everybody trusts that everybody else is necessary, and everybody's professional and knows what to do and is there to do that. And in the lower budget stuff, it's like, and granted, usually the lower budget stuff is non-union, right? And so people are less like aggressive about like, that's my, I'm doing that, whatever. And they're okay with being helped out, whatever. But they're also a little bit more bitter. So I totally see what you're saying there.
Yeah. I mean, because it's usually the same people, right? The people working on some of these lower budget ones that aren't union are still largely used to working on union projects, and the chain of command, so to speak, of I'm going to do my job. No one else is going to do it for sure. But it's also a safety thing, right? Because you have an actor trying to grab, an extension cord and accidentally electrocutes themselves. They're going to be held responsible for that. Like, why are you letting someone else do your work? And so there's like piles and piles of reasons that, stack on top of each other about the way things operate and why they operate that way.
Yeah.
And follow it or else you will get yelled at. Guaranteed.
Yes. And it's like, tell me another another type of work that's like, I mean, maybe in like construction, but even then, I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know. It's like so detailed and it's great. It's awesome. But yeah, to your point, I think that the higher budget stuff, like everybody is so nice and they just, they'll talk to you about anything, about whatever,
Well,
awesome.
I will say, I don't know if I'd call everybody nice. I don't want to go too far, but interesting, fascinating people. Absolutely. But I worked as a stand-in on a horror film, Friday the 13th, back in 2008. And everyone on set was virtually an asshole to me for the first like 2 weeks.
Really?
Just a new guy, you paying your dues. I didn't know that at the time. I thought, man, it sucks. Like, I am so unhappy. I'm happy to be on set, but really unhappy with the way I'm treated. And then eventually, like, you just become one of the crew. And, at some point, in the first month, they started playing gags on me, whatever, because I was working a full-time job while working on that full-time job. And so I was effectively doing 2 full-time jobs simultaneously, where I'd work my morning hours and then at night I would go directly to set. And then I'd go from set, I'd take a nap for 1 or 2 hours and go right back to work. And so by the end of the week, luckily both were just Monday through Friday, but by the end of the week, my roommate would call me a zombie. He was just like, man, you're dead. Yeah. And so while I'm on set, they didn't use me a ton on Friday the 13th. And so I would try to nap where I could. And anytime I would take a nap, they would just do weird little things to me. And it was pretty funny. Like, nothing like, too mean spirited, but they'd build like these little pyramids around me of rocks, like just jack it with me. It was fun. Great. I had a great time. But yeah, that initial welcoming was very brutal. Like, just, stripped of all humanity. It's in a sense, I mean, I slightly exaggerate, but you do feel like an
expendable.
Yes. Treated like a complete moron. Like, those are shoes. Like, okay. Like, it's pretty rough, but it is what it is. I mean, these are people who are excellent at what they do and will suffer no fools. Yeah. Yeah, like, and I'm nothing if not a fool.
So you fit right in.
I fit perfectly. Yeah. Perfect. Nice. Speaking of incredible locations, what are we doing today, man?
Today we are doing The Mummy, the one with Brendan Fraser. So if you haven't seen it, please pause this episode, go watch it. I believe it is streaming. What is it streaming on?
On my Plex at home.
No, it is streaming somewhere. It's streaming.
Okay.
So yeah, pause the episode, go watch it, because we're going to spoil a bunch of stuff.
A lot of stuff. We'll look at, a bunch of stuff. Some of the physical comedy, the way that, they're always adding flourishes to scenes or moments and committing to the bit. We'll look at some of the story and writing and keeping it PG-13, right? Death in the shadows, the way they use shadows to execute characters, some of the expositional tactics that they use, as well as how they continually progress the action throughout the film. We'll also have a couple of Mummy fun facts. This will be the last of the fun fact series and other such stuff and things and stuff. And these fun facts are really crazy, so stick around.
Oh, I can't wait. Yeah. All right. So a quick synopsis of the film. At an archaeological dig in the ancient city of Hamunaptra, an American serving in the French Foreign Legion accidentally awakens a mummy who begins to wreak havoc as he searches for the reincarnation of his long-lost love. Directed by Stephen Sommers, screenplay by Stephen Sommers, cinematography by Adrian Biddle, featuring Brendan Fraser as Rick O'Connell, Rachel Weisz as Evelyn, John Hannah as Jonathan, Arnold Vosloo as Imhotep, Vosloo as Imhotep, Kevin J. O'Connor as Beni, Oded Fehr as Ardeth, the Magi, and Patricia Velasquez as Anck.
Namun.
Namun.
Yeah. They say it 1,000 times and we still don't know how to say it. The reason I was laughing at your Vosloo comment is in The Mummy Returns, there's I remember me and my roommate, we were just laughing about this. There's this behind the scenes kind of blooper reel where the narrator is botching his name in the exact same way. Vosloo. And it's a shot of him, the actor, like getting ready for a scene. And he's kind of doing this weird little dance. And then he looks up into the camera doing this little funny dance. And it just came out of nowhere in the bloopers. And so he and I were just dying over that.
That's
so
awesome.
It just reminded me.
Arnold
Yeah.
Vosloo.
Vosloo.
Right.
All right. Clip.
Unlike my brother, sir, I know when to say no.
Uh-huh. And unlike your brother, miss, I just don't get.
I know. You're wondering, what is a place like me doing in a girl like this?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, Egypt is in my blood. You see, my father was a very, very famous explorer. And he loved Egypt so much, he married my mother, who was an Egyptian and quite an adventurer herself.
And I get your father and I get your mother. And I get him. But what are you doing here?
Oh, look, I may not be an explorer or an adventurer or a treasure seeker or a gunfighter, Mr. O'Connell, but I am proud of what I am.
And what is that?
I am a librarian. And I am going to kiss you, Mr. O'Connell.
Call me Rick.
Rick.
Todd, this movie requires that you appreciate the tone and what it is. It's so in that way, it's either charming or eye-rollingly painful to watch. And so I have no idea where you fall on this axis. Are you charmed or annoyed?
That's a good question. Am I charmed or annoyed? I was very annoyed. Very annoyed. But I love the movie. The movie's fun. Brendan Fraser is great in it. I mean, they stole directly from Indiana Jones.
Right.
It's like straight from. I mean, he is playing Indiana Jones. He is playing that. So the casting is great. I really think it was great. Brendan Fraser is fantastic in this, and she's fantastic too, I guess. But it's just that these lines are like so cheesy and so just because it was one thing for it to these lines and stuff to happen in Indiana Jones, like it's much older and it hadn't been done before, right? And so anytime you do something that hadn't necessarily been done before, you can get away with a lot. But this has already been done before, and the whole love interest of the adventurer kind of thing, where she just falls for him because he's adventurous and she's this hapless woman kind of thing. I don't know. I didn't like that aspect of it. But and then when the things like when they're racing to the city. And they're on camels, but the other people are on horses, but the camels get there before no, that's not. I don't believe that at all for a second. And she wins. She beats him.
That's what lost you in a movie about a resurrected
Well, that was
mummy?
one of the things. That was one of the things, right? But I like the historical setup. They spend a whole good 5 minutes almost setting up what happened in history to create Imhotep, and I think that was really important. I think it really gave a sense of the awfulness of what happened then, right? He loves her so much that he's going to come back, right? And he suffered terribly when he died, and all of his people suffered terribly when they died, but it didn't matter because he was coming back, right? It gave him a backstory, as I guess the bad guy, I guess. But they spent a good several minutes at the beginning giving you that backstory, and I think that was great. But a lot of the lines were just like so cheesy. Who was the guy who is the his like really annoying guy?
The brother, Jonathan, or Beni, the little trader guy?
Vinny, the little tricker.
Yeah. Hold on, listen to this clip because I love Beni.
You just got promoted.
Steady! You're with me on this one, right?
Oh, your strength gives me strength.
I love that. I love everything about Beni. Cracks me up. I think he's a wonderful actor, and it's just the lines are okay. His delivery is excellent, right? Your strength gives me strength. It's like he's full of it when he says that. It's a
perfect example of the lines on the page are nothing. It's how they're said.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because imagine reading that.
Right.
Imagine reading that on a page, right? Like, how am I supposed to say that? Right. And it's like good. Well, he does a great job of it. I think he was necessary. I like that he wasn't ominous. He was like the bad guy, but he wasn't ominous. He was kind of like a hapless dude who just,
saves his own skin relentlessly.
Right. Exactly. Like, if he's involved, he's going to do whatever's best for himself and no one else. Right. I thought that the actual mummy felt really amazing, to be honest. Like, the way that he would kill people, where he just basically sucked the life out of them. The best shot in the whole film for me was when he comes into the window and you just see the shadow of the guy raising up and just being sucked, the life being sucked out of him and him getting really skinny. I thought that shot was incredible. That was like man, it goes back to, we talk about this a lot about not showing things and how a lot of times that's more impactful because your mind creates it, right? And that's a brilliant way to show something like really gory without having the gore.
Yeah.
I think you do eventually see the body or whatever, but you don't see it actually happen in that moment. And I thought that was so brilliantly done.
Yeah, they kind of drop it into out of frame, right? And then he becomes this mummified corpse, which is, very relevant and topical. And so, yeah, I love how they just constantly kind of use that idea of, we'll kill people through a shadow on the wall, right? Or silhouettes. Lots of people seem to die off screen, or at least semi off screen, where we just see their shadow dying. Like in the opening itself, we see the king is slayed, in silhouette. Same thing with Namun, where she kills herself, right? And then at the end, she does it again. She's killed by the mummy soldiers, in silhouette again. Same thing, like you're talking about with the people being drained. And it's really, really smart, not just to keep it, PG-13, but it gives a very strong visual style to the film while still staying in the appropriate genre, right? This is a kind of a family comedy. You want a wide audience to enjoy it, as wide as possible, right? 13 and up, and keep it bloodless without losing some style to it. And really, really smart for sure.
Yeah, I think for me, look, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I think it's not the best, if I'm being honest, things like when at the beginning, when he leaves, where like he survives, right? Miraculously, because he's, whatever, he survives, and then it like runs off into the desert, and you have these guys standing there that are supposed to be protecting Imhotep or his sarcophagus or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're like, do we kill him? And the guy says, no, let the desert take him. Mm-hmm. I mean, why not just kill him? Really, if you've been protecting this place for 3,000 years and there's a guy who knows where it is now, he cannot leave. Like, that's the point. Like he should not be able to leave. And so, I mean, I don't know, if your whole point of living is to protect this thing, and you should protect it at all costs, right? Especially if it's been 3,000 years that, everybody's, yeah. Anyway, so that was a little like, oh man, can he just maybe get away and they don't see him, or something, a little bit more of an explanation there. Things like that. And there were other things throughout the film too that I'll try to think of as we're talking. I'll probably come up with a couple, but things like that were just kind of like, that's a little dated to me.
Yeah.
I think if this movie were made now, I would hope that something like that would be a little stronger, like a reason for that.
That's funny. Yeah. I kind of feel inverted. Like, I think this movie's aged incredibly well. Because when it came out, I felt exactly the way you do. It's like, oh, it was fun, but it very heavily is, borrowing Indiana Jones elements. He feels like a better version of Indy in the sense of his competence, right? He never really fails. It's the people around who seem to fail, and he pays the penalty for that, which still creates a lot of humor. But this seems to be, a pretty even mix of comedy and adventure with elements of horror. And so they never go heavy into horror, instead really relying on kind of romance and comedy and adventure, to make it compelling. And so watching this, when it came out, felt very like I just wanted something serious and like bloody and horrific. And this movie had other things on the mind. It wanted to be fun and lighthearted. And I love that now, walking in, knowing what it is. I appreciate it so much more for the silliness, because it's a film that knows that it's silly, and it doesn't shy away from it. It leans into it, and it contrasts really well, because that opening really sets for a serious tone with Imhotep, and the entire film. Imhotep is never silly. Like, I love how seriously he takes himself and the film takes him. Like, he is never a joke. And I think that's a really great contrast for the humor of all the bumbling dolts trying to kill him. And it's really strong contrast that helps kind of heighten the comedy that much more. And yeah, I think walking into it, expecting some silliness after a few of these little ambient, spooky moments. I even love how O'Connell makes a comment at the campfire. That seems to happen a lot around here. And that's just it. He doesn't laugh. He just makes a comment. He's pointing a thing out. And so they do a really good job of writing the line of not turning the film itself into a joke while still having kind of this light humor. It's a very thin line, and I think they walk it really nicely. And it kind of, for me, starts certainly in that opening with the invasion at Hamnas. We're gonna butcher all these.
Hamunaptra.
Hamunaptra. Thank you.
I didn't butcher that one.
Well done. But that whole invasion sequence is, has some humor elements to it. But it's really when we meet Evie in the library, where they really put their stamp and saying, hey, this is what this is going to be, because it's her kind of destroying the library, right? It's really big physical comedy, and it's exceptionally well executed, right? Especially for a silly punchline. And it is. It's a very cartoony punchline of her on the ladder, suspended in air. It's gold. Like, her physically on that thing looks amazing. They give you this beautiful wide shot, and it's so ridiculous. And her face, and you can feel the tension in her body. And she kills it. She sells it. I laugh at that shot every time. I think it's just a really well executed punchline. And then, of course, it goes into her knocking down all the shelves, which is very silly. And it's just this domino, which is a great shot. Like, oh my God, because it's a 360 shot of the camera going from one all around this big circle until the final one hits. And then she rises up into frame. Just incredibly well done. And it's a massive gag. Just imagine resetting that for another take.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you are committing to the joke at that point. But it does set up the tone of the film really well, right? This is a stylized horror adventure comedy. and you need to expect comedy from here on out, or else you're going to be really frustrated that the characters are never really, crying over fear of, because, in a horror, it would be very scary to be approached by, this undead monster. Instead, they're yelling back at it and shooting it and running away. Like, there's a really good juxtaposition of comedy and stylized horror adventure. And just, going back for a second on that reset, like I was out having drinks last night with some other people in the film community, and I was talking to someone who works in the art department, and we were just all fascinated. I don't really hang out with a lot of people from the art department. It's usually like other cinematographers, directors, and actors. And so just picking someone's brain that works in art is fun. And, we were all kind of like, well, what are some interesting fun sets or annoying sets? And she was talking about shooting in, like, I forget if it was a cornfield or a wheat field, but either way, she was like, you have actors walking through the scene and trampling all these corn stalks, and
oh my gosh,
you got to reset that. And to reset it, like, you got to replant them into the ground, and then you're analyzing them like, oh, this one's too broken, you need a new one. You got to run around looking for a one that you're not going to need later. And so she was like, resetting that was a massive headache, but at the same time kind of fun. And so doing something like that library scene really is like committing for a day of jacking around with these massive bookshelves. And I got to respect the hell out of that kind of commitment. But the comedy itself, right? Lots of style, lots of over the top comedy without betraying the story, right? The comedy always reflects character. It never betrays who they are for the sake of a joke. And so Jonathan is always this bumbling guy or just terrified, right? He's virtually always useless. Even when he's helping, he's kind of useless while he's helping. Right at the end, he's reading, trying to read the passage, and he's just kind of amused by, oh yeah, I kind of get that one. And meanwhile, you cut to Rick is, fighting for his life, and Evie is trying not to get murdered by Namun. And so it's just kind of funny seeing that juxtaposition. O'Connell, right? He's always fighting, right? His jokes always come in the form of physicality, and he's either betrayed by the morons around him, or he's betrayed by his own arrogance, right? He thinks he can do anything, take anything on, and everyone's trying to tell him that thing is not going to be killed by your bullets, until finally it's killed by a sword. Thanks to he's saved by Evie, right? And her intelligence. And even though she's constantly needing saving herself because she's not an adventurer, she's not a gunfighter, as she says, right? She's a librarian. She's very smart, but just not very, physically up to par with Rick. And so all those elements, right? Beni is always a coward. Everything he's going to do is going to be in self-interest. And that's where his humor comes in. It's always, my jokes, my humor is going to come out of me saving my neck. And so every character's humor is staged very much in character. And I respect the writing on that front, because it's an incredibly well-written film that knows what it's trying to be and executes it perfectly well. And to that end, they're always creating these flourishes. Like every scene, every moment, they're looking for ways to heighten it just a little bit, in some way or another, right? Nothing comes simple or easy throughout the entire film. Always adds some kind of flair somehow. And so, for instance, at the beginning, she can't just buy O'Connell out of jail, right? She has to save him from hanging to death, which, by the way, nearly killed Brendan Fraser. I wasn't aware of this until I was scrubbing through. I was trying to look for the location list of the film, and just my eye got caught by one of the trivia things, and it was like, by the way, Brendan Fraser almost died while shooting that scene of being hung, because the wide shot wasn't him, right? That's a stunt man, which is a great shot. That wide shot of him dropping through the gallows. Oh, that's really well done. But the insert, the close up of him choking and nearly passing out. Apparently they got one shot, and the director was like, that was good. Can we, just increase the tension a little bit? And there's some back and forth on what actually happened, because there's Brendan's perspective and then there's Stephen Sommers, perspective. And maybe it's a bit of a mix, but Brendan was like, and they wanted it a little tighter. And so they went tighter. I got up on my tippy toes and they went tighter again. And I ran out of slack in my toes. I'm not a ballerina. And from that point on, like I was trying to sell it, but then I passed out. And next thing I awoke, with I think he said maybe an EMT was resuscitating him. And so there's some back and forth between what happened and why it happened. That's his perspective, which is fair. Then there's Stephen saying, and I'll link the blow by blow, but Stephen was like, well, no, he was trying to sell it and he got himself in trouble through trying to sell it. And Brendan's like, I guess if we're going to be super, super, super fair, like I took 3 big breaths to try to create some, purple in my face. And so I was trying to sell me choking. And whenever you have a noose that, with just a little, it doesn't take much, just a little tight around your neck will cut off that carotid. And so I maybe put myself a little bit more on the edge. Yeah. Respect the hell out of Brendan Fraser. But also, yeah, it gotta be careful. Sometimes it's just not worth it.
I mean, he got seriously hurt on other mummy movies too. That's one of the reasons why he stopped acting or like didn't act very much after this. He was just hurt. He's been hurt for years.
Yeesh.
And then other things I think happened or whatever, and Hollywood just like lost interest in him until recently. Thankfully, like I want him to come back. I've always loved
since Encino Man, right? Like I've never not loved Brendan Fraser.
I mean, seriously, like, yeah, I mean, we should do that movie at some point because Brendan Fraser,
Brendan Fraser. But they could have made it simple, right? But instead of just, she bought him out of jail, let's make it more visually exciting and put him in this bad position. Same thing with like the burning boat. There's a little, I found this kind of interesting that whenever he rolls out his bag of weapons, right? He's on the table. He's semi-flirting back and forth with Evie. And she was like, if you call that a kiss. And then he rolls out his little, I don't know what you call that, bag of weaponry. And when it rolls out, there's this rule of 3 that plays out because it's got this bam, bam, bam quality. When to me, it doesn't sound like it should have that second bam. It should just be bam, fold. And instead it's like, if you listen to that moment, it has this triple element that makes it feel more whole. Rule of 3s are usually present. They're present in a lot of places. In audio, they just used it in audio. And I love that. The Magi is reaching for the key in this room burning down, and Jonathan kind of stumbles in and accidentally bumps him and sets him on fire. Like for a joke, for a gag, that's a long way to go. But they're really committed in this film to being lighthearted and humorous. And it's those kind of things that could have really seriously, injured someone. And so in that way, I really have to respect action comedies almost more than normal action films, because you have to do it and sell it as comedy while you're doing it. And it's just so incredibly dangerous. O'Connell in that same kind of sequence, right, is having a shootout and he's reloading his gun, and we see the wall kind of bullet popping out, bullet, and Evie is watching this happen while he's just nonchalantly kind of reloading his 6-shooter, and she grabs him, right, and yanks him over and a bullet pops through. Like, you don't have to do those things, right? But it just adds that certain little element that makes it comedy, that makes it fun. And fun is in the little details. And same thing with that scene where they're racing the Hamunaptra, because why walk to it when you can race, right? It has absolutely no bearing on the story. It's just fun. It's just something to make getting from A to B that much more fun, right? Writing is saying they got there. Style is how they get there. And so this is all about style. This film has just gobs and gobs of style. Same thing with we get there. We're in Hamunaptra and they have Rick tying the rope around the pillar, right? And it's whipping right next to the warden. He's like, right. It's silly. It's visual. We can just do everyone doing their thing, but why not have something more fun happening? I guarantee that's not in the script. That's your actors and director all working together to say, how can we just make this 5-second clip a little bit more interesting and fun? Let's add some flourish to it. And there it is. It's silly. Like, it's this massive long whip of a rope just kind of being flicked, and this character like trying not to get hit. And it's reflective, once again, of Rick is doing something. He's being active, kind of punishing the characters around him. And then you have this warden who's a bit of a jokester, and doesn't take himself very seriously. And it feels in keeping with his silly kind of character. Arguing in Evie's room, right? They awaken the mummy, and then they escape. And now we're back in Cairo, thinking about leaving. And now we're having this argument break out between Evie and Rick. And O'Connell is packing her bag while she unpacks it, right? It's physical humor that underscores the discussion. They're constantly in motion, right? Packing, unpacking, circling the bag while they're arguing, right? It's far superior to just sitting and arguing, because this is a physical comedy as much as it is an adventure. You want them to always stay in motion, never stop when you can be moving. And it's just a great use of little flourishes, little tiny things to heighten the scene, add to it, reinforce your genre, and have fun. It's just about having fun, and keeping it fun. And so to that end, the story and writing elements, a lot of the exposition comes through Evie, right? And having Rachel Weisz as a bookish librarian is a really great avenue to have her spouting off exposition, right? It's very fitting with her character to want to constantly share her knowledge, right? And it's relevant to their situation for once. For once, she has an audience that has to listen to her and all her vast wealth of knowledge. And it's so good because she's an incredible actor. And it really makes nearly all the exposition feel completely natural and exciting. Except I would say the one exception is her intro in that library scene. She knocks everything down, and you have the doctor, right? The Egyptologist, I guess. And he walks out and he's just like, why do I keep you around? And this is pretty sloppy fast. They keep it quick, but it's very like, because, I know 72 languages and I'm qualified and I'm the only person who blah, blah, blah. No, your parents are rich. That's why. And it's sloppy. It's the only sloppy exposition, in my opinion, in the film, but it gets the point very quickly, and we can move along. Like, they escape that very, very fast. It's just so that they can lay the groundwork and move on. And so I appreciate they didn't belabor it. They made it quick and punchy, and then just eject it as quickly as possible, which is what you want to do with bad exposition. But sometimes it's just necessary to help the audience along. They progress the action throughout the film very, very well, right? We start with guns and swords, a little bit of magic, I guess, in the very, very opening, but then we immediately come to grounded realism, right? Guns, swords, explosions. And then we move into scarab beetles eating people. When the beetle crawls into the boot of the warden, the guy who, had the power over O'Connell, his physical performance there is amazing. Oh my God. Right. He's embodying something crawling inside you and the horror of it eating you alive from within that you can do nothing about. And so you can see, if you just kind of study that for the physical performance understanding, there's obviously not a beetle eating inside of him. I mean, it's just some of the amazing best acting, man. My God. Yeah. And then action progresses right to possessed mobs and resurrected mummy soldiers. Before that, we have the curses, right? Insect plagues, fire, brimstone, sandstorms, resurrected mummy soldiers, collapsing pyramid, so to speak. And just really well done we're going to constantly amp up the stakes more and more and more and more. We're going to start small and build big. And that allows you to do a lot of things. One, have action in the first place, but also to elevate things and keep the stakes moving up higher and higher and more fun. And so great job there. horror elements are pretty minimal, right? It's all around the mummy itself. He's picking off characters one by one. And when he does it, it's very serious. The tone is very, hardcore, especially the first guy, right? With the eyes, they go just very classic. We're going to stick to bare bones horror right now. And just kind of a jump scare element. Kill it. I think they do a good job. Lots of sneaking up behind people, right? Draining them, etc. Cinematography wise, I only have a couple thoughts on this. There was this lovely dissolve as they're walking through the desert early on Camelback. And there's a shot of them moving from right to left. It's like a slope of a screen. The top third is sloping from, this dune sloping down towards the right, opening up, and the camels are walking, and they're on, the camels walking up and to the left. And it's just beautifully framed because it dissolves to a shot of the sun on the left underneath the dune. And so if you watch this dissolve, it's like they're walking on the sun, right? It's so hot outside, and it's just kind of reinforcing how the brutality of the desert. It's simple, it's quick, but it's just really, really well executed. And the other little cinematography thing was just first shot, last shot. I mean, it's simple, but we opening on a massive shot of the sun, and they have a ton of beautiful shots of the sun throughout the film. And it's the sun rising over the pyramid, right? We pull back to reveal ancient Egypt. But then the last shot is them riding off into the desert sunset. And so it tells a story of a beginning and an end, right? The sun rising versus the sun setting. And it's very simple bookend kind of stuff, but really well executed. I love this movie now where I didn't love it when it first came out. Now that I know what it is, I can walk in and say, okay, they're going to be silly. There's going to be spinning mummy heads or whatever. And that lets me enjoy seeing Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz on screen together, because them together on screen, dynamite. Like you could make any movie again with them on screen together, and it's just going to sing, because they both have they just ooze charisma and connection, right? They connect so easily and so well. And this movie itself is a smoke show. I mean, but whether you like guys or girls, like there's something for you in this film, right? Ladies get Brendan Fraser and Vosloo and Oded Fehr. That dude is a smoke show. And guys also get Oded Fehr, I guess. Yeah, sure. And Rachel Weisz and Patricia Velasquez as Anck Namun. That's one of the most iconic costume jobs in Hollywood history. Her in that paint. Obviously, she is just, incredibly sexy, but the paint work on that, the detail work on that is unbelievable. I don't know what I would put up against it as far as like body paint or an incredible makeup job. Like, I know before that, maybe you would say James Bond, but that made James Bond look like, elementary level work. It's just unbelievable. I don't know if that falls into the costume and wardrobe department or like the art department, or if it's like they put on their Captain Planet, rings and combined powers or what, but like that, it really is just iconic and just absolutely incredible for sure. Yeah. So that's kind of where I land, man. I love this movie for what it is now instead of what I felt it was trying to be when it came out. And it's all about whether you can be charmed by it or not. And I get it. I get kind of the frustrations, and it sounds like you still had some fun. But at the same time, it's hard to not see the Indiana Jones in it because the era, the character itself, and the romance. But I liked. I would give it a solid 6, maybe 6.5. Maybe if I watch it again, I'd probably give it like a 7. But there were just some things where I felt like, man, you do so many things that are great. Like
one of my favorites was what you brought up earlier, the bullets going through the wall, and then she just nonchalantly grabs him, moves him out of the way as one passes where he was. And I think that's probably the best description of this movie, right? It's serious. Like, so you will die.
Yeah.
People are trying to kill you, and yet just move you out of the way. And then he acts like it didn't even happen, and he just starts shooting again, right after that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that moment. But there are things that like bug me where I'm thinking, you do these things, right? And you do that really well, but then you'll do something like the curator burns the map. Why?
Well,
like hold on,
Okay.
let me finish, because we need a reason why they need Brendan O'Connell, right?
nope.
Why?
Because within the story itself, that guy was trying to prevent people from going to Hamunaptra in the first place. We discovered that, halfway through the film. He's with the Magi.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
There is story
That's
logic
why.
at play. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I like the movie more now. I missed that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good then. Good.
So not everything was just, convenient storytelling. Because to your point, like, at the opening, they let him go, let the desert take him. That's a very convenient way for your hero to escape. And they could have tackled that differently. But it also sets up an expectation of the desert as an enemy. And so there's multiple ways to approach that. And they took the friendly way instead of...
No, I get it. I forgive him for it, for
Yeah.
sure. I think that was just an example of something that was annoying to me.
Yeah.
But no, I thought it was great. The set design was unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
I mean, if you question that, if it's unnoticeable, just look at the very end when what's his name, the
Beni?
hapless dude who saves himself all the time,
Beni? Yeah.
yeah. When the ceiling is coming down and he's trapped, but then he has to like continue to crawl so he doesn't get crushed to the steps, right? And then he falls onto the steps, and you see this they pull out to this big wide, and you see this massive wall that has come down and blocked the exit. And he's in this gigantic room, which we've already seen the room. We saw it when they lit it up with the mirrors, but they show one mirror getting crushed, right? So after that huge wide shot, we see the mirror get crushed, and then obviously all the light is gone, right? And he has his torch. But that one shot, if you don't notice the sets at all the whole movie, it forces you to notice it then. You just have this, because it was one thing to be in a big open room, is another thing to now have that room, shut off from everything else by this gigantic thing. It was unbelievable. I was like, oh my God, that's crazy.
I completely agree. One of my biggest frustrations with a lot of these kinds of films is I feel the set design. I feel like they're in an actual pyramid tomb.
Yeah, great point.
I had to look up. I was like, obviously they built a set, but I just really need it confirmed.
And they did, right?
Yeah, they did.
Of course.
But it's just amazing. Like, that's really incredible work. I've seen movies with bigger budgets do terrible jobs where I'm like, guys, I don't even believe your rocks are rocks. Like, that's really bad set design, and yet here they are, like, selling me not just on the period, but that there's this tomb filled with traps and that shifts. Like, every time I see him Beni trying to crawl back into the main room, I always think, oh man, he's about to get crushed. He's not going to make it.
Same. And it's like, but it's a throwaway feeling that they do, because I don't know. They stay with him so long that you kind of feel like, okay, he's going to get out. It's not like a quick thing, right? Okay, he's going to get out. I can see the end. I think he's going to get out. And then he does. But the whole time you're thinking, how is he going to make it that far, in this little bit of time that he has? So you are questioning that. So yeah, it's crazy. You feel it for sure. And that might be another. So, when we cut to the wide of the big wall having come down, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we're seeing is just a flat wall.
Uh-huh.
But we know how thick that wall is because we spent all that time underneath it as Beni was crawling to get out from underneath it to not be crushed. So now I'm not seeing a wall. I'm seeing a huge block of stone that's 30 feet deep now. And I have a sense of depth of that. And then also, you know, they have the amazing sound of it.
Yeah.
That heavy sound of it coming down. So you can kind of feel it. But it did add that sense of depth to that wall to be under there with him. So yeah, it was
good point.
Really amazingly done. So yeah, I think this is one of those episodes where I think you're convincing me a little bit more of like why this is good. It makes me want to go watch it again with some new eyes.
Yeah, I might go. I haven't seen The Mummy Returns in a while, so I might check that out and
let's do that.
See how it feels. That'll be fun.
See how was it the same director?
Yes, same team. Like he worked with them again. They kind of found their common ground. He worked with them on this and another film after this. I forget which one, but and so I don't think they're on bad terms. It was just one of those like stuff happens and you try to move on. But also Brendan did say, he was like, look, I don't care what y'all think, but I'm done for the day. Like I'm going home.
When that happened?
Yeah, when that happened.
Okay.
Good for you, bro.
Good for you. At least calling it a day.
Heck yeah.
Man.
So a couple mummy fun facts.
Let's do it.
All right. For several hundred years, people ate mummies for medicinal purposes. So mummies were stolen from like Egyptian tombs, and skulls were taken from Irish burial sites. Gravediggers used to rob and sell body parts, and they used to crush them up and use them as, you know, ointments and salves. And I'm sure they ate it and drank it and did whatever they thought. It's weird, like eating mummies, but they also used to, like maybe like 100 years ago, used to have these unwrapping parties where you would come to someone's house, they'd unwrap a mummy and I guess eat it. Like they all kind of snack on mummy. Like that's how you know you have too much money.
That is gross.
That's pretty weird.
Oh my God.
And mummies were ground up for paint called mummy brown, which started in the 16th and 17th centuries and continued to be used as recently as the early 1900s. I think around like 1910, 1920 is when that kind of faded out. But yeah, it used to give you a very specific type of brown, Todd. Don't question the method.
That's
Join
ridiculous.
the madness. That's pretty weird.
I mean, it's a human body.
It's a human body.
Like,
when I die, do not use me for paint.
I will not. Don't worry. I don't want you that close.
No, I want you to eat
all,
me.
but...
Just don't use me for pain. Like,
okay, cool.
I have
the
a bar
paint thing that puts it over the
correct.
edge. Okay, got it.
I will
Crazy.
become you, and you will absorb my powers. Yeah. So weird. Yeah. I guess that's all I got. I enjoyed this.
I wonder if and I'm sure that it probably happened. I wonder if it's true, you know, that some people got mummified alive, or you know, like
some kind of punishment,
buried alive as in sarcophagus, you know, with bugs and stuff. Like it happened in there. I imagine something like that happened, but to your point, they about it being serious when it needed to be serious. That whole opening is really freaking serious. Like there is no comedy. Anytime it has anything to do with Imhotep, it is all business. And so I think that might be one of the reasons why it's really good, is because it starts all serious, but then we get right after that, you know, we get some comedic relief a little bit before people start dying, right?
Yeah, right.
You know, before the battle, right? With the what's his name running off and everything. But that whole intro scene was so brutal, of, you know, saying that they were mummified alive, you know, and then he gets buried alive with those bugs, and it's just
rough. And I remember looking up after one of our Indiana Jones episodes. I was trying to verify this thing I'd heard or read. I couldn't source it about, certain types of traps or things that work in pyramids. And I couldn't source my comment, so I deleted it out of the episode. People won't know what I'm referring to. But I did come across one thing that I think it's when they opened King Tut's tomb, like a few of the people present died. And that kind of gave rise to this idea of, cursed tombs or whatever. And apparently what happened, right, was you opened up that air and there was just a lot of toxins from decomposing and just sitting there for, centuries, millennia. And yeah, that got those spores or whatever, those toxins got into a few of those people's bodies and wreaked havoc. And I think they died. I'll look it up and put it in the show notes. But that definitely popularized, this idea of cursed tombs and whatnot.
I do know that there are, like booby traps and stuff that do exist or like have existed in tombs. I think that there's even one place, maybe I don't know if we talked about it or not, but I did hear that there's one place in either one of the pyramids or in some pyramid or some sarcophagus where it's a room that has no air in it. That like, do you know what I'm talking about?
Right. That's the comment that I couldn't source from that Indiana Jones episode. I couldn't figure out where I heard it or where I read it. And I couldn't find anything online that could verify it. And so I just kind of removed it. But the thing that I had heard was that, through some kind of use of gravity, there was like kind of a lack of oxygen pit, maybe like a carbon monoxide poisoning pit that, you could get stuck in and it would kill you. I don't know. Maybe this is just complete fiction. I read it in a book and it just sounded cool. And so it stuck with me. But yeah, I couldn't source it. But I can imagine those kinds of things being used, right? And being a really clever way to, I don't know, try to keep people out of your body.
There are lakes in the ocean, like super saline lakes. It's called super saline. That at the bottom of the ocean, where there's an ocean within the ocean that you can't even get a submersible through because it's so saline.
Wow.
Yeah, like there's a really famous moment where this guy actually finds it, and it was the early 2000s, and they're going along the sea floor, and all of a sudden they see this ring of black, and he goes over the ring, and he realizes, oh, this is a lake of something else. And then he tries to submerge into the lake and he can't. They literally bounce off of that lake or off of that water or whatever.
Yeah.
Come to find out, it's like just super salinated water that is just so heavy and dense that they can't go in it. And so maybe it's something like that where there's some kind of, it's not to say there's no air there,
right?
But there's like a heavier element that collects in this room, and if you go there, you breathe it in. It's maybe something like that.
Yeah.
I could imagine something like that existing. For sure.
That fascinating. I mean, we do know that ancient Egypt was incredibly smart and advanced.
Exactly.
We found all kinds of crazy things that took us ages to figure out and discover. And so
it's aliens, Wes.
And it's all aliens. And if nothing else, I think they're credited with discovering or creating beer is what I want to say. Who knows?
Good people.
When in doubt, give Egypt credit. That's my life motto.
I like it. I agree.
Nice. What are you going to recommend this week?
Okay. Well, I was going to recommend this last week, and then I didn't. So I'm going to stick to it this week. I think it actually, whatever. Going off the gore aspect or the horror aspect of this, and since you brought up eating people, I'm gonna recommend Dahmer on Netflix. Which, if you don't watch the entirety of the series, just watch the first episode. Yeah. That's what I would say.
Yeah,
there's Netflix is doing some right things in how they're in the last several months or year or so, how the crews that they're getting on this, the production companies that they're working with on some things, they're really stepping up their game, I think, in a lot of ways, and I'm noticing it. especially with a show like this. So yeah, I'll just recommend episode 1 of Dahmer because, you know the outcome if you've done any research at all. So you can but if you watch the first episode, it'll give you a good idea of what to expect.
Nice. I'm going to stick in the action comedy genre and recommend a little film that came out ages ago called The Rundown. It stars The Rock, Christopher Walken, Sean William Scott, who you may or may not remember, but it's just delightful. It's one of those movies. It's exactly like this. It doesn't take itself too seriously, has a lot of fun. Christopher Walken has some great lines, and he's just a really fun villain. Directed by Peter Berg. And if you just want something lighthearted that's easy to get into, has a lot of fun payoffs, then I highly recommend checking out The Rundown. So stay tuned for next week. We're going to take a look at Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I'm excited to peel back the curtain on that one. And hopefully, I feel like everyone has watched that at this point. And so hopefully we can add to the conversation. I don't know. It'll be fun to take a look. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget, drop us a review, subscribe, leave us a note. And if you want to recommend something or ask us to review something, let us know. And if you want to leave a comment on this episode or see the show notes, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/themummy.
And today's quote of the day is from Lucille Ball. I'm not funny, but I am as brave. That is so good. And, it's very timely, I think, for me too. I think everybody probably at some point, well, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people at some point in their lives, they just decide, you know what? I'm not going to be embarrassed anymore.
Wow.
That's it. Just that. You don't need to be, you can call it brave if you want, but I feel like that's even heavier than what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just don't be embarrassed, right? About liking Spice Girls or about, playing dress up with your daughter or about like, I don't know, farting in public, whatever. I'm serious. And when I say embarrassed, I mean about anything, right? Because then the fear of embarrassment, the fear is what can hold you back of failing. Let's make it even bigger, a little bit bigger. Fear of failing at anything. Well, if I'm not embarrassed to fail, then I'm going to try, right? Because it doesn't matter, right? So this quote is very timely for me because I think within the last few weeks I've made a shift in my mind. It's taken me 42 years, and I don't know, maybe it'll stick, maybe it won't, but of just, you know what, I'm just going to do what I want to do and not be embarrassed by it, because I think we're all brave in some way. Yeah. You're brave because you make art, right? You write scripts and you go film it and you edit it and you release it and you get clients and you do work for them. And you're like, here's what I think this should be. And they either like it or don't. And then you make changes. You're brave every day, right? You wake up and you get out of bed. That's brave. I know what Lucille is talking about is more, it's like, being completely free. But free of what? Free of embarrassment, free of looking a fool, right? Be the fool, right? It's actually wanted, I think. I think the world wants fools. I think this movie is a good example. Like, one of the things that makes this movie good are the fools.
Yeah.
Without the fools, it's just heavy. And then all the things around it that happen then, are kind of like pointless and aloof. But because there are fools involved, you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, he could have died, but she moved him out of the way. Okay, cool. Right? Or you're with me, right? Yeah, I'm with you. And then he runs away. Fools. And fools make it. So anyway, it's a great quote, man.
Dude,
that's awesome.
Well said. Wow. Yeah, I mean, she's like the queen of physical comedy, right? I don't know if you get better than Lucille Ball. If you do, please let me know. But she's amazing, right? And that attitude really just punched me in the face, because I was like, oh, I just want to hear what she has to say about comedy. And for her to just say it's not about being funny. It's about being brave. Because it's, to your point, it's about not being embarrassed or being willing to have a joke not land. Like, that's terrifying to drop a punchline to zero laughter. But if you want the laugh, you got to take the risk, you know, you got to risk, you know, being embarrassed or, you know, trying again or just moving on. That's the hard part, is when a joke doesn't work, to just move on, to say, that's okay. I'll get him on the next one. And just keep going. Man, I respect comedians so much. It's somewhat easy to be dramatic, to make someone cry, you know, and to tell a heartbreaking story. It's really hard to try to make someone laugh, and to put yourself out there to say that this is my kind of humor. I hope you laugh too. Because tragedy is all the same. You know, there's not my kind of tragedy. It's all tragedy. But humor has so many, you know, wrinkles to it that what makes you laugh may not make me laugh. And this movie really rides the line of my kind of humor, because on average, there's a dozen other films that are trying to be this film, and I hate them. I just hate them.
Yeah.
But this film, it's not embarrassed, and it does a great job of just being willing to commit to the bit. Like, we're going to throw people off cars, and it's not necessarily funny, but it's in keeping with a sense of a reckless physical comedy. Like, no one got hurt by being thrown off a horse, right? He pulls him off his horse as a gag. Like, that's a joke. Like, goodbye, Beni. And he just throws him over the boat or yanks him off his horse. Like, that's just for a silly gag that you're not going to laugh at. They know you're not going to laugh at it, but it's a part of a mentality of the style of the humor, and committing to it takes a lot of bravery to say, we're going to tell a lot of jokes that aren't really funny, but we're going to commit to this humor, and hope that you just, you know, go along for the ride. Because if you don't, man, that's going to be a really rough theater to sit in.
Yeah.
As a director sitting in a comedy where nobody's laughing, you know, that's where you build in like a pilot ejection sheet that just shoots you out of the theater.
Yeah, that's interesting, because you know, if you make a drama, you don't know if people like it or not until afterwards when they tell you.
Yeah.
But if you make a comedy and nobody's laughing, you know it's not landing right away, right? But I think it's also, you know, like I respect the hell out of comedians too, man. I think that is such an underrated thing. We just expect to laugh. You see somebody standing up there on a stage with a microphone, you expect to laugh. And in a way, it's a little built in, because if somebody is watching comedy, they want to laugh, right? You're not going to watch comedy if you don't want to laugh.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's still demanding. You still have to deliver. And I think it, you know, I think it's mostly scary for people who think that if I don't make them laugh, I am not funny, or they will think that I am not funny forever. But that's not the case. I mean, you know, you look at like Babe Ruth or something. Yeah, he had most home runs, but he struck out more than anybody else too. He either hit a home run or he struck out. That was it. He didn't ever hit a base hit. Like, Babe Ruth couldn't run for shit. But and then he's known as like one of the greats, right? I mean, come on, Dave Chappelle, 100% has bombed in his life, right? But he didn't let that in his mind say, oh, I'm worried because now these 200 people think that I'm not funny forever. No, they didn't think I was funny tonight. Tomorrow night, the same crowd, they might laugh their ass off. You know,
you
it's
have
just
to
like
be super comfortable with rejection. Like,
yes.
Oh,
almost crave it in a way, because then that tells you what didn't work, or what, you know, like gives you clues on what to change or whatever. You got to love the process, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the thing. If you love the process, then it almost doesn't matter what the outcome is, because you're just loving writing comedy, standing up there talking. Because I think that's what Dave Chappelle's bits now are, just him talking. Like, he doesn't even tell jokes necessarily anymore. He just like talks, and he can do that or whatever, I guess. But back to the point of this quote. It's a great quote that I hope I can live by, because it's very freeing too. And I think shooting with you helped me a lot, because I had to stand out on a street corner with a guitar, and play and I had to play like I wasn't nervous.
Yeah.
I had to play because that's not where I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable on a stage with people behind me playing together.
Everyone showed up. They signed up for you singing right there.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where my comfort level is. So when you sent me the script, I thought at first I was like, oh, this is a great script. This is fun. This will be fun. And then I was like, oh, fuck, I got to stand up, but then I quickly put that out of my mind
Wow.
and said, you just have to do it. Like you have to do that or else it will fail. If you look like you're scared or like you're nervous, then you're done. You got to be brave. You've got to be fearless. And I'm not saying that the performance will be, Oscar worthy, but hopefully it came across that I was not nervous at all. And I was not.
That's so funny. Like, yeah, I realized that before getting to set, but once we were on set, it never occurred to me anymore because you were so comfortable and you were so like jamming, like you were invested in your character. And I was like, it never occurred to me that you would need that note once we arrived on set,
that's amazing to hear because it was hard for me to get there. It really was. I had to get there before I even got to Austin.
Wow.
I had to know getting on the plane to go there that I'm doing that because you were going to pick me up, bro. You picked me up and we went straight there.
Right. Yeah.
So I had to in my mind say, I don't care. I do not care if anybody thinks that I'm good. I do not care if anybody stops. If I get a crowd, I don't care. I'm just going to do whatever it is I'm doing in that moment and be there. And I'm so glad that at least if the acting could be shit, but at least if it came across as he's not nervous.
Yeah. Great work.
As long as that happened, then that was my goal.
Great work.
So yes,
Damn.
Great quote, man. I could talk about this stuff all day because just because of where I'm at in my life and how I really think that the shoot changed my outlook, which is weird. It's weird because, I watch, this is going to go long. I'll be quick. I watch the same amount of like inspirational shit I think that most people do. Like, I love hearing sayings from people or quotes or whatever that might make me think a little differently. I know that I need to be brave when I do this, but seeing that quote from Lucille Ball is like, that's equating bravery with funniness, with comedy like that. Oh, I've never thought of that. I ingest the same amount I think as everybody else, but hoping and thinking that maybe I'll think differently, but unless you actually put it into practice, it doesn't matter. Mm. And so shooting with you, I had to put that into practice. I had to say those things that I just said, like, just do it. And since then, literally since then, I have not been scared of anything. As in, like, if I want to do something, I'm going to do it. If I want, and a perfect example, let me just give you just a quick example. I told you about this, I think last week. Some crazy stuff has happened at my work lately. The day that some crazy stuff happened, I had a massive meeting with a client, a massive one. And where my boss and my boss's boss were on it, and I had to present something that I knew nothing about. Right? And I get in to the meeting, and for some reason, I was fearless. And I just took it and I ran with it, and it was the best meeting I've ever had. Ever. And because because I just said, you know what, I got to do it. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it the best I can. And if I fail, I fail. And it was fantastic. And I really think that it was from that shoot. And from then on, I'm just going to be like that. And I've gotten some good stuff has happened since then. But point being is that if you are yourself and you're fearless and you're just not embarrassed to be yourself or to say the wrong thing or to ask the wrong question or whatever, then you're going to get a response that from life, I think, that is completely different than you could have ever imagined. because you're not timid. You're not being yourself. You're not asking the question that you need to ask in order to do the thing that you need to do or to get the information that you need. Just, if you don't know, ask the question. If you want to do something, do it. Who gives a shit what so-and-so says? Why not just try it? If you fail, fine. Not a big deal. And I know that sounds like you've heard it 100 times. You have. But if you do it, it's different. It's different from hearing somebody say it. It's different from listening and saying, you know what, he's right. I really should, like not be embarrassed. Yeah.
It's amazing because we are such social creatures, and like we have so many more fears than are actualized. You're more afraid of what could happen than what actually will and is more likely to happen. And if you just push against that wall, it's not as scary on the other side.
That's it. Okay. We should end it there because that's perfect. That's the way to end it. Thank you guys so much for staying with us through that. We should break that out of like the episode. I don't know. Let's leave it in. It's fine. That's why we have these quotes of the day. Yeah. I love whatever you pick. Like it always sparks some kind of initial or subsequent, 20-minute conversation about life and love and all the things in between. Anyway, thank you guys for staying with us. We hope you enjoyed this. Thank you, Wes, for clarifying a lot of stuff. I think that you brought out a lot from this film that I didn't get on the first viewing, so thank you for that. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe, review us wherever you get your podcasts, share us with your friends. Let us know if there's a film that you'd like to see us do. We'd love to hear from you. Until next week, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies. I love when he yells back at him.
Oh, yeah.